It is now 6:30 p.m. and we are meeting this evening at the Harry Butters Selectmen's Chambers located at Norwood Town Hall, 566 Washington Street, Norwood, Massachusetts. And the meeting is also being broadcast by Norwood Community Media for a live broadcast as well as recording for future broadcasts. Before we introduce tonight's agenda, as is our tradition, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance and have a moment of silent reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have a relatively light agenda this evening. We specifically put this particular meeting together for the purpose of having a tax rate hearing for the upcoming year, 2025. So at 6:40, we will be joined by the assessors, and we'll go through a public hearing regarding the setting of the tax rate. We also have an appointment at 7:10 that has been postponed. Our agenda had a 7:10 appointment with the developers of 923, 929 Washington Street. We're going to reschedule that to the January 14th meeting in January 2025. The details of which there were some plan revisions that needed to be discussed and presented in a different way. So we're going to do that in January. New business, we'll be talking about some March town meeting dates, and some other basic approvals as often new business contains. But before we get into our tax rate hearing, which is scheduled for 6:40 p.m., we will go into new business and talk about our new business, and then hopefully by the time we're done with that, we'll be ready to start the hearing at 6:40 p.m. So the first item under new business is 2.1, setting of the March town meeting, setting a date for that meeting. And I'll ask Mr. Rosen, who is sitting in for Mr. Mizuko, if you could take us through town management's recommendation for the town meeting in March.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Good evening. In anticipation of a March special town meeting, which would focus on land use, and I know that the planning board and its staff are looking into some articles right now for this March town meeting. We're asking the board tonight to consider holding a couple of dates in March for a special town meeting to be held at Norwood High School. The dates are March 10th, which is a Monday, and March 13th, which is a Thursday, the following Thursday, should we need a night too. So both of those dates would start at 6:30 p.m. So that's our recommendation that the board consider March 10th and March 13th as the special town meeting.
Yes, Mr. Plasko.
Why the 2 dates?
Well, March 10th to start, you're right. But we're holding the second date, the Thursday, but the town meeting would start March 10th. That's correct. So I guess it'd be the first. 2
dates in case we need to have more than a one-night meeting.
That's right.
Yeah, but even then, technically, town meeting could adjourn it to whatever night they want.
That's true.
That's fair. We are just, yeah.
We try to go in a row, and we
Right.
make sure we have the hall available, but we don't actually call it.
Yep, absolutely. And again, we have done the last couple of years, set aside a March time frame for land use articles. And I understand that the planning staff and the planning board are working on articles. They are yet to be determined specifically, but we'll revisit that when they're ready to come before us with those articles. Any discussion, any questions about the March 10th date, March 10th to 13th of next year for March town meeting on land use? Okay. I don't think we need a vote for that. That's administrative.
No, we do.
We do?
Call for the top. Well, we need it when we sign a warrant, I guess. That's when it's really official.
Well, I'll entertain a motion to set March 10th as...
Why don't we just announce the intent to call
Yeah.
a town meeting for March 10th, and then we'll deal with it formally later.
So to that, we'll take that, Mr. Plasko, as a form of a motion, the intent to set March 10th as our March town meeting date.
Second.
Mr. Lane seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, it's unanimous. Let's go to Board of Selectmen. Item number 2.2, Board of Selectmen and General Managers FY24, actually it's FY25, goals and objectives for discussion. I did speak with Mr. Mizuka earlier today, but let me defer to Ms. Grove for an update here. Ms. Grove, please.
Thank you. So I know I've gotten feedback from folks. I got some more feedback from Selectman Plasko recently. So all this is folding into the document. And then the intent would be for the general manager and I to meet this week for me to go through it with him, see if he has any recommendations or spots anything that we've missed. In particular, the three that I'm especially wanting to make sure that we all are in alignment on and are choosing the things that we think will be the most meaningful for these goals is around free cash, capital planning, and revenue. You know, I know that we have sort of a very high level goal that we want to see improvements, but I want us to really define exactly what we're going to try to do those things. So I'm sure that the general manager has his own ideas around that, and so it'll be very interesting in getting his feedback. And then the only other thing I was going to ask for tonight is if anybody had any particular other things that we feel that either the current list doesn't cover or that you're like, well, are we sure we want to keep that one? Just any of that kind of feedback that hasn't already been sent over to me.
Okay. Any discussion?
I think I've sent some notes to you, and nothing additional to that at the moment.
And Ms. Grove, a few things to send to you
Yeah.
before Friday.
Perfect.
meeting. So
Good.
we'll get those to you.
Great, thank you.
And the intent is to focus, as we have in the last year, on developing jointly goals and objectives, working with the manager, both from the board and the manager. So what we'd like to have coming back to us, perhaps at the next meeting, we'll be able to have the listing of those, that detail that comes from both us and from Mr. Mizuko, and from there we can have a good discussion regarding how to put forward the priority, if you will, of goals and objectives for the coming year, or I should say, current year, as we're into the FY25. Item 2.3, we had listed approval of licenses, our annual approvals of licenses. The agenda notes that we are going to reschedule that to the agenda of 12/17, our next meeting. Unbeknownst to me, as we're kind of learning about some of our procedures here, apparently our approval of all licenses, we need to attach physically the licenses to our public agenda. And although the board has a document listing those goals and objectives, it's an administrative matter. They need to be placed on the public agenda. We'll do that for the 17th of December, our next meeting. We have 1 minute, and I will talk about item 2.4. This is a late agenda item. This is a resident's request. Submitting a request to place a decorated holiday tree at the park located at the intersection of Cypress and Lincoln Street, a location that is also known as the Cookie. Mr. Lane, do you want to speak to this, as I think the resident reached out to you initially?
Oh, sure.
If you would, please.
If some of you recall, we gave permission for some benches to be dedicated in that area, cleaned up that Cookie, put some nice stone down, and I think the DPW had decorated it for the fall for maybe a scarecrow. Is that what they did? Yeah. So one of the residents just asked if they could continue with the seasonal tradition, and I imagine it will look very similar to the gazebo on Mylod Street, which looks great.
Yes, and I think the resident also reached out to Mr. Ryan at DPW. He
Yes.
suggested that you get the approval from the board, so.
Clarification, are they
Yes.
asking for permission to do it, or are they asking us to do it?
Asking for permission to do it.
You just indicate, Mr. Ryan, make a comment?
No, I just think the resident, as I understand it, Mr. Lane will correct me, that the resident approached Mr. Ryan, who suggested that we Do I have that right, Mr. Lane, that Mr. Ryan suggested that she get approval from us to decorate?
Yes,
put the
he
tree?
does, he
Not
has,
just go
he has no
forward,
issue
yeah.
with that, yeah.
Yeah.
I would just also make a recommendation that if we're going to approve it, that it be contingent upon the installation being approved by DPW.
Sure.
Because in case it blows away or
Yep.
they make a hole where they shouldn't, or who knows what, just so we protect the property and the public as much as possible.
So, any other discussion? Then I will entertain a motion to approve the request with the caveat that a decorated tree be installed by DPW. If someone wants to make that motion?
So moved?
Second.
And it's been Mr. Lane and Ms. Gross seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous? With that, it takes us right to our 6:40 scheduled meeting. Good evening, gentlemen. How is everyone today?
Chairman, very well.
Yes.
Thank you for having us in.
Yeah, before we start, Mr. McDonough, I'm going to ask our board clerk, Christine Woodward, to read the public hearing notice, and then we'll proceed to the public hearing. Ms. Woodward, please.
The Board of Selectmen has scheduled a public hearing on Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024, at 6:40 PM in the Harry B. Butters Chambers, Room 34, Norwood Town Hall, 566 Washington Street, Norwood, concerning the percentages of fiscal 2025 tax levy to be borne by each class of property in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 56, as amended by Chapter 369 of the Acts of 1982 and Chapter 79 of the Acts of 1983.
Thank you, Ms. Woodward. So with that, Mr. McDonough, welcome, and we'll yield the floor to you. Good evening, Mr. Thornton.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Rosen, Ms. Woodward. I'd like to introduce my board. On my left, Mr. James Grover. On my right, Mr. Bob Thornton. I'm sure you're all familiar with both these gentlemen who've been lifelong residents and have contributed to the town in many, many ways over the years. We're here this evening to give you the options regarding a fiscal year 25 tax rate. I was adding it up. This is my 24th tax hearing, between 15 years on the Board of Assessors and 9 having one of your illustrious seats. So I was proud to be here. And as in the past years, all of our commercial, residential, as well as our personal properties have been reviewed by our outside vendors for submittal to the Mass Department of Revenue. The PowerPoint packet in front of you has the detailed information to support the new assessed values. The new growth for this year was in line with previous years and expectations. Last year was a certification year, which resulted in a larger number for new growth. Next year, we expect the new growth numbers to be substantially higher due to hopefully near completion of the FM Global construction, the new lots proposed to be built on Prospect Street development of, I believe it's 16 homes, as well as 6 new homes being constructed on Dean Street. Personal property continues to increase every year in new growth. So by and large, most single-family residential properties saw an increase in assessed value of approximately 2%, 2 to 3% in some areas, but for the most part, 2%. Condominiums saw an average increase of approximately 1%. 2 and 3 family properties increased approximately 9% respectively. Commercial properties were reviewed and adjusted on a case-by-case basis, with resulting in actually a few changes in commercial property values. It is important to note that the new assessed values are based upon sales of properties that sold in 2023, as well as supporting evidence from income and expense data submitted by the taxpayers. So with that, we'll begin our tax hearing presentation. On the first page, you'll see you're going to have legal references for tonight's hearing, okay, which is, and we'll read this, the selectmen shall annually determine the percentages of the local tax levy to be borne by each class of real property as defined in Section 2A of Chapter 59. In determining such percentages, the selectmen shall first adopt a residential tip factor. Said factor shall be an amount not less than the minimum residential factor determined by the DOR in accordance with Section 1A of Chapter 58. Prior to the adoption of such percentages, the Selectmen shall conduct a public hearing on the question of their adoption. At such hearing, the Board of Assessors shall provide all information and data relevant to making such determination and the fiscal effect of the available alternatives. The DOR shall not approve the tax rate of a town until the Selectmen have held such a hearing, public hearing, and adopted percentages of the local tax levy to be borne by each class of real and personal property. The next slide shows the three areas of discussion for this evening. We'll briefly touch upon the tax levy, which is the revenues needed to be raised from taxation to fund our budget. The value of real estate properties, which the taxes are assessed upon in proportion to their relative value of property owned. And the tax rate, which is a mathematical quotient of dividing the tax levy by the property value. Next, we'll get into the area of the tax levy with a little historical analysis. The tax levy percentage increase history. 4 of the last 6 years, the annual increase of 3.9%. 2 of the last 6 years had 10% plus annual increases due to Prop 2.5 override votes. So if you look down from fiscal year 20 through 24, it shows you the 3 years with the lower numbers and the 2 years as a result of the override and the middle school. The first was the general operational override. And then this year you see the net increase of 3.6%. The next slide is the annual tax levy increase. And you'll notice with the 2 years in question on the override, we saw a large number increase. But historically, it's been pretty level as far as any increases, which result from the 2.5% plus any new growth. So we've been pretty good. Historically, with the exception of those 2 years, the overrides caused the increase, which is why the tax levy will go up by 3.6%. If you take fiscal year tax levy of 24, you add in 2.5%, then you add in any new growth, which will be used to help set the 25 rate, and that comes out to 3.6%. So there's your increase for the tax levy for this year. The actual tax levy for fiscal year 25 is slightly larger at $107,793,406. The components, the next slide is the components of the tax levy history. Again, just showing the levy limits for each of those years, the 2.5% and the new growth, and shows you what the impact is upon that. We also included slides for the tax levy ceiling. Then you also see the numbers for the debt exclusion levy, and this results in our maximum allowable levy. Next slide is real estate values, which is really the biggest part of what we do down in assessing. Residential rates and commercial real estate. Real estate value components, where the real estate values come from in billions. You'll notice that commercial and industrial provides 1.9 billion. Residential is by and far the largest portion, almost 3/4 at 5.9 billion. The values come from percentage-wise, mostly on the residential properties. As you can see, 76% to 24% of the values from commercial, which in the end result allows us to shift, which we'll get to. Next slide is a residential and commercial real estate values, shown that the increase has been pretty consistent growth for most years. Everybody knows what home values have done over the last few years, starting back in 2021 with a 3% increase. The next year was a larger increase at 11%. And these are based upon the values. And that was when the market really started to turn in 21. 22 continued and has really been pretty steady since. I mean, this is the first time that we've seen sort of a drop, less homes on the market, no bidding wars as we've seen in the past. Next slide, 13, is residential real estate values. Has shown consistent growth. Like I say, between 2021, property values increased 4%. The huge jump in 12% in 2022, just as COVID was kind of coming out of it. And as I said, continued 8%, 9%, and 3%, so it's cooling a little bit in the market. The next slide shows the value of the average single-family home. This does not include condominiums or multifamilies, just single-family homes. Again, you've seen a pretty consistent rise of, from $490, $60,000 increase, another $60,000 increase, almost $60,000, and this year about $25,000. So on value. So there's consistent rise in property values, as everybody sees. Just from looking at the newspaper and the markets, you'll see. So this year's average single residential home is $673,348. The next slide is the commercial industrial values that have been hovering around the 1.6 billion level for these last several years. Again, the percentage changes, 7%, 9%, 6%, and a lower number this year. A lot of that could be due to vacancies in commercial properties that are still trying to recover from COVID. Next slide, we'll get into the tax rate and tip factor. Just going back and thank Mr. Thornton tremendously for his help. And I also want to publicly thank Mrs. Donnelly and Mrs. Conroy from my office, who've been indispensable, always, but especially during these last few months in helping to put everything together. Couldn't do this without them and my board. The tax levy shift pretty consistent going back, 56% back 8 years ago. 57, it creeped up a little bit to 61, 68, and then the board held pretty consistent for the previous 3 years, 71%. Last year, the board went to 74%, and I think their wisdom was that the residential taxpayers seem to be getting hit a little bit harder because residential values are increasing much faster than commercial properties. And that's historically, it's difficult to determine commercial values because they go with the market as far as income and expense for putting a value on a home, on a commercial property, as opposed to a residential where, as we know, like if you had an appraisal done, you'd have 3 similar type houses sold within a mile within 6 months. You could find a lot of that data presently, and that's what appraisers do. When you're working with commercial properties, it's a whole different category because there aren't any large FM Globals that sell or Modernas that sell. So you really have to rely heavily upon their income and expense, which is submitted, and then reviewed across the board by our vendors. So we've been very lucky, and I think by the number of abatements that have been filed over these years, it says a lot about the quality of work being produced by the two vendors that produce the values. So quite happy with what they've produced for us.
So the abatements have been pretty minimal?
Abatements have been minimal. For, I think 1 year, I think the largest year I had was 120, but on average, I think last year we had 47. The year before was about 50. So it pretty much tells us that the values are good. And we've had great success settling any cases at the appellate tax board, in part due to our outside counsel, who doesn't really represent most towns. He's usually on the other side going after the town. He's got a great reputation, and thanks to him, he's been able to settle a lot of cases for a lot less than what the property owner's been asking for. So that helps. I mean, we've got a very strong overlay at this point, so much so that we're going to be lowering it this year, or recommending the town meeting lower it, because we have enough in there, and the state wants you to keep a balance. So we want to make sure you have enough to pay your bills if the courts rule against you, but you don't want to have a lot of pot of money sitting there that's not going to be spent. So that's why this year the board reviewed that, said, maybe we should cut back
Okay.
Instead of asking town meeting for $1 million for the overlay, we've recommended 500,000. So hopefully the abatement numbers, hopefully everybody's happy with the numbers they see tonight. The next slide is tax rate history. Pretty simple, residential, commercial. The splits have been pretty consistent over the years. And last year was $10.47 for residential, $23.92 for commercial. And as I said, by and far, we always hear complaints about, the amount of tax, but when we show a few more slides, you'll see that we're in pretty good shape compared to most of our surrounding towns. And which is the next slide, which shows the average tax bill for single-family homes within our contiguous towns. Newton, obviously, at the higher end of 15.6. Needham, Westwood, 14, almost 15,000 each. Then as you go down, Milton, 11, Walpole, 9, Dedham, 9, Canton, 7, Framingham, 7, Norwood, just close to 7. But I think you see that we're most aligned with a Braintree that has its own light department like we do, with a Canton, with a Dedham. I mean, those are the towns we always kind of compare ourselves to. And I think by looking at Braintree, I say, it's $500 difference between. And you have to remember, they have the South Shore Plaza too, which is a big tax revenue for them. The next slide shows the Norwood commercial tip factor. Basically how other towns have been reacting to the opportunity to shift. Norwood is pretty much right in the middle. You go from a low of Walpole at 130, which doesn't really have a tremendous amount of commercial properties. You see Weymouth is up there. Then you have the bigger city like Framingham, which is now a city. But pretty consistent when you look at the others. There's 4 to 5 have gone to the max of 175. We're right in the middle at 174 compared to other surrounding towns. The next one is the impact of tipping the tax rate on a single-family residence for fiscal year 2025. Again, as we try to do every year, we give the board the options, most prevalent from 70% of a shift to 75. 75 is the maximum. You'll notice a 70% shift, the residential tax rate would go up to $10.70. The average single-family bill would be $7,205. The actual fiscal year 24 bill was $68.98. So you'll see the increase of $307 on the average, again, the average single-family home. That's a 4.4% change. Go to the other extreme is a 75% shift, where taxes go up to $10.48 per thousand. For a single-family tax bill of $7,057. Prior tax year tax bill, $6,898. So a minimal, not minimal, I mean, no increase is minimal, but $159 or 2.3% increase. So these are the options we'd like to give the board to discuss, look at, and see what they fear is comparable to other towns. The next slide introduces the fact of what the shift does on commercial properties. Mr. Thornton usually helps me with this. If the board were to keep the 74% tip factor, you would see an increase on commercial properties of that figure, right? Correct, 62,000.
That would be the average.
Average tax increase.
That would be the average assessment.
Yeah, the average assessed at 62,556 for commercial properties. The next slide basically pulls it all together, shows you the options you have with the increases versus the commercial tax bills. And finally, the next is the recap, basically, and puts them side by side so you can look at the different options, what effect they have on both commercial and residential. And again, we just highlighted the 74% just for discussion, as that's where the board stood last year. But any one of these options, are certainly within discussion point, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if the board has anything you want to add, Mr. Thornton, or?
I had a question. Did you say this was your 24th tax rate?
24, yes.
This would be my 44th.
See?
Just to put it
Always
in
got to show me up.
It's time for my bedtime.
44.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add, Tim. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you.
Scola?
I think we covered pretty much everything, since you all left now.
Thank you, Mr. Burrow.
One thing I would say, though, I think a lot of this stuff you've seen before, and towards the end of the presentation where Tim was mentioning, there's like a slide that shows, the dual impact on commercial and then residential. And then we show the other towns. One of the things I always used to remind people is that when you look at, do they have these bullpen slides?
Yeah, I have the whole thing.
So,
Not I have them here.
Mike, can you get 31? I think it's 31.
This is a PDF, so.
Oh.
Yeah, this is the final version.
Okay, so, back up. Oh, can you, okay, can you go the other way, Mike? I'm not sure this made it in there, Tim.
Oh, so what number slide are you looking for?
Keep rolling? Keep
That's it.
rolling?
That's it.
That's it, so you stop,
Yeah,
okay.
that's it.
So what you didn't see, we can get this to you. It's, if you look at the data that shows our neighbors vis-à-vis us and the average residential tax bills, if you look at it, the town's average residential tax bills go like this. And, from 11, 12, 13, 14,000 down into the sixes, where we are. And there's one other slide in here that I think, really shows how we do that, which is what the other towns in the Bay State League or neighboring towns, what is their percentage of commercial industrial real estate in their town? And then how much do they pick up the tax levy, or how much does it tip towards them? And there's it's an inverse relationship. So, for example, the Westwoods of the world are very low on their commercial industrial real estate. So therefore, their average residential tax bills are up here. And conversely, Norwood's commercial industrial is in the 40s. And our residential is way down at the bottom. So, there used to be a misunderstanding or misnomer at town meeting years ago. I hope it's been rectified by now, but people would say, our average residential tax bills are so low. Why don't we raise taxes? When we were going through the override issue and people were talking about it. And the answer is that the reason why its average residential is so low and we do so well isn't because our levy isn't where it should be. We're at within a couple of $100,000, within 1% every year of what our levy can be per 2.5, and what the actual levy is. So it's not a matter of not spending enough or adding, to the school budget or whatever budget you have. The levy is already kind of maxed out. It's 99% of what it can be per 2.5. And the reason why the average residential tax bills are so favorable has nothing to do with how much we're spending. It has to do with what percentage of our property values are comprised of commercial industrial. And you look at our neighboring towns, night and day. So that's really what bails us out. And tonight is more just we can go to 175, a factor of 175, commercial vis-a-vis residential. And a lot of the other surrounding towns that have commercial industrial, there are above us. So I guess what I'm saying is, to keep it in perspective, the reason why we have a tip factor is because the law allows us to, when you have a heavy composition of commercial industrial. And we're doing really no more than what our neighbors are doing with the percentage we're tipping. And because of our favorable composition of commercial industrial, it really brings the residential down. So so basically, levies where it should be. The tip factor is where you're allowed to go, and we result in getting a bonus of much lower average residential tax bills vis-à-vis our neighbors because of commercial industrial being to such a high extent versus some of our neighboring towns. So, thank you.
Questions from the board? Mr. Sad?
I just want to thank the three of you and your 100 years of service to the town of Norway. Bobby, I know I was talking to Phil Nolfe the other day, and when did the straight sticks were, when were you allowed to have curved hockey sticks in high school?
I want to say after my time, but they started coming out back when we were playing. Used to drive the coach crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time. The only thing is, my concern would be is the commercial with Moderna coming in heavy, Norwood Hospital coming online hopefully soon, FM Global, and these other Route 1's obviously building a lot out. Is that number going to rise substantially in the next year or two that might help the residential people?
Yeah, well, I think definitely the FM Global. I mean, if they're, I spoke with them last week. They were trying to determine their tax burden. This year, they're not going to be hit much because as of June 30th, there was basically just ground. But they're going up fast and furious. So next year, we'll pick that up as new growth and definitely increase value. Moderna, the same. I know we've all heard rumors that it sold for $400 million. I haven't seen a deed for that yet, so I know what I saw in Banker and Tradesman. But I had just had our vendors go out and basically remap the entire Moderna parcel. Now that they've got some buildings up there with storage units that could be taxed personal property, or they could be taxed, they're not fixed. But we plan on hitting them pretty heavy this coming year for all the buildings that are up there. They've done a lot of construction. We are constrained by the TIF agreement. Same with FM Global. But even given that, I mean, I see an increase. When you can increase the new growth, it spreads it across. So actually it does help. It helps everybody. The more money you can raise, obviously. So you take like the parcel on Dean Street that has, I think it's 6 new homes that they're putting up. But, that was a single family lot, believe it or not. It might have even been vacant land. But now that's going to generate six lots that are probably going to be $1.5 million. So you're picking up $10 million in new growth just on that one property, never mind what goes on at Prospect Street. So, like I say, next year I think the numbers are going to be much higher on the new growth, which helps us. It helps everybody because it spreads it out. You might have X amount of money to raise, but now you've had a chance to raise more because of changing from non-buildable to buildable.
One other comment too, Mike, I don't know if you can find this, back around 13, or towards when we talk about residential real estate values, great. And then if you could take a peek at this, just visually, real quickly, to Mr. Sad's point, you can see, this is residential real estate, right? And you can see that the increases are healthy. 4.4 to 4.9, that's $500 million. This is billions, right? So, and then 4.9 to 5.3, 5.3 to 5.7, 5.7 to 5.9. So going up hundreds of millions of dollars. Then if you fast forward, I think 2, Mike, boom. So here's commercial. So to your point, Mike, like compared to those growth amounts, here's what we're seeing in the commercial. I mentioned in the slide that we're hovering around 1.6 million, very flat. As you look at residential, it's going like this.
Yeah.
These guys, and don't forget there was a pandemic involved, and there's been commercial, industrial vacancies on rentals, which can bring property values down. So basically, this has been pretty stable. I won't say stagnant, but the growth rate is less than the residential. But the key thing is we didn't see a lot of these values or companies leaving town in an exodus with, the advent of the COVID and what it did to businesses. So that's really a big takeaway to me as I look at this and say, well, that's pretty good. And then you look at, there's another slide further on, I don't want to hold you up, but when you look at what the average commercial tax bills have been vis-à-vis residential's, it's really, I think it puts the residential taxpayers in a good light here. I explained why. And as far as the commercial taxpayers, again, they've stayed here. They came here with great location, 95, 495, 128, et cetera, and they've stayed. And we've got them in industrial pockets, not pervading, the neighborhoods. So when you look at it, I'd say the residential values have really held steady.
Yeah.
And then some. And commercial, bad news is that they're not growing crazy, but they've held their own, and they're holding steady with combined commercial industrial of roughly 1.516 billion. So that's a good thing. You mentioned the Modernas and the other FM Global and all those. Those are major coups that the town experienced in the last few years, and we've attracted them and retained them. So that's good things. It's not doing a ton to the overall, but it's pulling some of the tax levy away from the residences, and their bills aren't going up astronomically. So
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Mike, if you can go to slide number 11, just to kind of emphasize what Mr. Thornton. So, I think, Mr. Thornton, you mentioned it, the percentage of commercial property.
that's value.
Yeah, this is value.
Yes.
But it's in the commercial properties are generating about 40% of the levy.
Yes.
Or thereabouts.
Because of the tip.
Because of the tip, and
Yes.
this kind of emphasizes that, although
Yes.
it's, they represent 24% of the value. The property tax levy is 40%, just to emphasize the strength of the commercial property. And I think you've addressed this too, Mr. Thornton, that even with the tip factor being at currently 1.74, we still have a strong commercial base. We still have people coming here, Modernas, and we don't show it in the slides, but our tax rate for commercial property seems to be competitive.
Yes.
We're not really worried about our being an outlier when we compare to these other communities that are in your reference tables.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be honest, Mr. Chairman, there were years when I was on the board with Mr. Plasko, and tax levy hearing, there was always at least one gentleman, Mr. Reardon, God rest him, I think he just passed away, but he used to come in, and he was the only one that come to the tax hearing, and he would advocate for, don't kill the business. And I remember it stuck with me when I was on that board, that, you want to be fair. You're going to do the increase because you can, and you have to, but you're cognizant of what businesses are going through. And, I mean, the boards over the years could have thrown the maximum, could have gone to the 1.75 every year. They did not do that. They were wise, I think. I mean, if you look back, 71%, 70, 3 years in a row. But there's so many different factors. The values come into play, so you have to take it year by year. And sometimes it's good to look at the past, and look to the future too. And I see a brighter future especially with the new growth.
Great. Mr. Thornton.
To clarify for you, Mr. Donnelly, so every year we go to set a tax rate with DOR, there's a document called a tax rate recap sheet. The very first page speaks to what your last point was, which is, and this is last year now, so you haven't set a rate yet. Tax levy, so 76%, 24% of the value is commercial. When you look at the levy, 42%. They're picking up 42% when they only have 24% of the value, because this law allows you to do that. And so that's where the numbers came from. It's we have a total levy of 104 million, and of that, it's roughly 60 million goes to residential, the other 40 goes to commercial. So that's where the help comes in.
Thank you very much. Any, Mr. Plasko, you have a comment, question?
Question, Mr. McDonough, I think this is my 28th tax hearing.
I knew he had more than me, Bill.
So I can't believe I'm asking this question. Am I approving the dollar amount or the TIF amount?
You're approving the TIF amount,
Because the numbers may
the
actually.
TIF amount, I should say, yeah, because they could be off by
That's what I thought. I
pennies.
wanted to make sure. of that.
Yep, absolutely, you're correct. It's the residential factor that gets put into the state. And it should come out, the tax rate should be those figures that we mentioned. But when they do rounding to pennies, sometimes it might be,
That's what I recall.
10:48.
Thought I recalled, I want to make sure.
yep.
Yep.
And I mentioned to a couple of the members as we were getting into the rooms.
No, that's a good point. I'd like to
see
mention
if
that.
The Reardons
Yeah.
wouldn't be here tonight, so that we wouldn't be having probably.
And if you were off by a penny, you said, you told me, yeah. So it doesn't, it does, the state will dictate what we pay, but you dictate the percentage of the shift.
You both have great memories, because just prior to the meeting, Mr. Plasko was commenting about the hearing. He made reference to the Reardon family and John.
Oh, really? He just
So-
passed away, yes. John was a great guy, great businessman.
If it helps to move things along, I'd make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we.
We need to close the hearing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so why don't I do this, Mr. Plasko? It is a public hearing, so at this point, I will ask if there are any members of the public who wish to comment or speak on the issue of the tax rate hearing. They're welcome to do so now. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Lane, Mr. Sad seconds. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. All opposed, unanimous. And Mr. Plasko, I'll yield the floor to you at this point.
Thank you. I was going to make a motion to set the fiscal year '25 tax rate at a 74% shift. That's the same as we are at the moment. Some people might say, well, why aren't you going up to the 75%? Give it to business as much as you can. I think we've made a good point why we have to be fair and look out for business as well as the residents. And that if we do what I'm proposing, the residential will be going up 5 cents, and the commercial will be going up 14 cents. If we went to the 75% shift, residential still goes up a penny, but commercial would go up 28 cents. That's a significant jump for them in 1 year with everything else going on in the economy and everything. I don't think this is a year to do that. I think, the 5 cents is fair and level. The average property going to 186 is a fair number as well. 86 is a fair number as well. And I just think that's a number that makes the most sense. If we go the other way, and we go down to 73%, residential actually has to pay 10 cents more, and business pays a 0 increase. So that doesn't seem fair to the residents at all. So I think staying right at 74 is the fairest and best number for everyone involved.
Thank you, Mr. Plasko. Any discussion? Mr. Lane?
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Mr. Plasko. So on the motion, Mr. Plasko has recommended or made a motion to have a tip factor of 74% in order to set the tax rate for 2025. All in favor of Mr. Plasko's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, it's unanimous. So you guys did it again. Thank you very much.
Keep the comment. Thank you all very much for your time this evening.
Thank you all.
See you next year.
Wish you all the best for the holidays.
Yes, happy holidays to you too.
You as well.
You too, Mr. Grover. Thank you.
Bye, Bobby. Puck dropped 10 minutes ago, Bob. See ya.
Good night
Bye,
now.
Timmy. Thanks, pal.
All right, that was our major item for the evening, and we have completed it. I'll return to the agenda. We have one more item under new business, a late item, agenda item. It's a one-day liquor permit from the Norwood Portuguese Club, submitting an application for a one-day liquor permit for a dinner party on Saturday, December the 14th, 2024, from 6 p.m. until midnight, at the Norwood Portuguese Club located at 1090 Washington Street with approximately 90 guests expected.
Approval?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lane. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, unanimous. And that takes us into section 3 of the agenda, and it's manager's update. And in the absence of Mr. Mizuko, we'll turn the floor over to Mr. Rosen,
All right.
please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have exactly one thing to say, and it's a shout out to the Norwood Recreation staff, the police, the fire, the public works, Norwood Light, the Rotary Club, and all the volunteers that made Holiday Extravaganza this past weekend such a success. I was there as well. There were over 700 s'mores delivered to hungry folks, and especially the kids. Mr. and Mrs. Claus did a great job entertaining everybody. The fire department had the engine come down with Santa and Mrs. Claus. It was a great day, and it was a little cold, but it was an awesome day out there. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who made that happen: staff, volunteers, elected officials that showed up. Thank you for being there as well. So that's all I had for tonight. Keep it brief.
That was really a nice event, and a special shout out to Mr. and Mr. Claus for coming all the way from the North Pole for
Nice.
their busy time of the year, but they made arrangements to come here to Norwood, which we appreciated. I'll start with Ms. Grove for Selectmen Addenda.
I actually don't have anything exciting, other than, again, to thank everyone who makes a huge difference in how fun the tree lighting event is. So it's really great to see the community come out and all the hard work that goes into the setup and to, setting is a lot of s'mores. So I just really appreciate all that work, and looking forward to a really great holiday season.
Thank you, Ms. Grove. Mr. Plasko.
I just want to remind people that this Saturday evening is the Circle Hopes Luminary Night on the Town Common. It's a very special night for some of us. It's really a heartfelt and emotional kind of evening if you get into it and participate. And that will start, I believe, at 4 o'clock Saturday here on the Town Common. Typically, it's the coldest day of the year. It won't be as cold as tonight, but other than that, I'm checking on my phone here, and it says that it's the coldest night the rest of the week. So it will be a cold. But bundle up and come down and enjoy it. It's a special event. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Plasko. Mr. Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple other events of note at the Norwood Historical Society on Saturday at 4 p.m. They're having their holiday open house. And then the following day at 1 p.m. the high school madrigals will be performing. So those are two nice events. Those are both at the Day House. Not to steal your thunder, because I'm sure you would have mentioned it, but on Tuesday of next week is the comprehensive plan open house at the library, and the time is
6 to 8 p.m.
6
Simone
to 8
room.
p.m. So I know you'll be there. I think some of us will probably be there too. You can probably explain more what's going to go on there. And then also, Mr. Sad noted when we were chatting beforehand, just the job that the fire department did with, unfortunately, there was a fire at a home on Melville Ave yesterday afternoon. And although there was a lot of damage to the building, I don't think anyone was injured. I don't think our firefighters were injured. So just a testament to the work that they do and the leadership from Chief Bailey. So it's greatly appreciated. I'm sure there's also ways to help out the families who might have been displaced. And usually that stuff circulates online. But I think my wife had said the fire department was collecting gift cards.
I have a note on it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And that is it. Oh, also, the next time we meet, you'll have celebrated a milestone birthday. So in advance, happy birthday, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Mr. Lane, for reminding me.
40. 40.
Mr. Sad.
They used straight sticks back there. Remember Bob in high school?
Yes.
Mr. Rosen, just remind Tony, these potholes on Washington Street, they're getting worse before the winter comes, and people are complaining. Also, South Norwood Christmas Party is gonna be on December 12th at the Balch School. We're celebrating 90th birthday for Frank Bellotta, a teacher who I had. Great family, great gentleman. So it's December 12th at the Balch Cafeteria, 4 to 6 p.m. And family and friends and students, come on down. Any questions, see Helen Donahue at the store down in South Norwood, Diane Ferrara, the principal, you can call her, or Olga Ludella. So it's gonna be a great party for the South Norwood community, the town of Norwood. Also, all the sports teams, congratulations. Now you're into the winter schedule, go get them. I want to congratulate the football team, big win over Dedham. Coach Manny and the team and the staff, congratulations, finishing strong. And we have the pancake breakfast at the Ball School from Diane Ferraro on Saturday, December 14th, 8:30 to 10:30 a.m., $7 per person. And also, a couple sad notes. Congressman Lynch called, and his sister Sheila passed away, 64 years old, unexpectedly, and we had sent some flowers, and Tony and Jimmy Garrity was instrumental of getting some flowers over there for us, and he just wanted to say thank you for the people in Norwood. Teddy Mulvihill and those people showed up, so thank you for that, and condolences to Jerry Foley and my old friend Barbara Kinter. And Manny Lope Sr. passed away, and a great resident of Norwood, the Sportsman's Club, the North Walpole Fishing Game, and a past soccer coach when I was just coming out of high school. So our condolences and sympathy to the Lopes family, and that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Happy
Mr.
holidays
Sad.
to everybody.
Thank you very much. Just to build on some of the addenda items that my colleagues have indicated, I had Circle of Hope Luminary Night as well. And for those of you who weren't able to get in the mail requests for a dedication or a donation for a luminary, you can still do it. There is a form online. I noticed Mr. Plasko had one in his packet, I believe. But you can go online and you can get a form to fill out to have a donation sent to the Circle of Hope with your with a special note regarding who you're donating in memory of for the luminary. You can go to Murph's Place between now and the event itself, and they'll be accepting donations for that. Yes, Mr. Lane, thank you for the note about the fire department's work on Melville Avenue. Credit to the fire department and their mutual aid partners for really knocking that house fire down, and people are pushed out of their homes, and that's terrible, but there were no significant injuries, which is a credit to the department as well. There are some activities going on for donations of clothing as well as gift cards, which I believe you can drop off at the Public Safety Building, because I believe the fire department is hosting a donation box there, as well as the high school. Gifts of clothing and gift cards can go to the high school. A number of the families are school-aged children, some of who attend Norwood High, and I believe Vice Principal Cindy Durain is the contact for that. So those are two opportunities for the community to help out with the families who are in a tough situation just before the holidays. But the community will do what it always does and support these families. So thank you for Mr. Plasko and Mr. Lane in particular for noting those community events coming up. Yes, and I'm going to pass out this card for my colleagues in calling all Norwood residents. Mr. Lane made reference to this on December 10th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., the Comprehensive Plan Steering Group, the Master Plan Comprehensive Plan Group is hosting a community open house from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the Simone Room of the library. This will be a really interesting event. It's the first opportunity for the committee to interact and engage with residents regarding work on the comprehensive plan. So basically, the comprehensive plan is an initiative that requires a lot of input, insights, discussion with residents regarding what they desire to see in Norwood in its future state. So we will have a session there from 6 to 8 where you'll be able to learn a little more about what is a comprehensive plan, how it's being comprised, what are the actions that are being taken to construct a comprehensive plan. Then there'll be a series of stations manned by the committee members, to engage residents with discussion points about Norwood. So I in particular am at a station where I will be talking to folks about why Norwood, why they live here, what is it significant about Norwood, the words and phrases that describe what they love most about Norwood. There'll be a station for input regarding the top 3 things that are not working for Norwood, but we should address through a comprehensive plan. Discussion around ideas residents might have about ideas they have about how to address the particular top issues that residents see. And also just another station where we'll be talking to folks about what's your ideal Norwood look like in 10 years. So sort of developing concept in terms of what people would like to see in the future for Norwood. And from this, and there'll be a series of engagements similar to this on a smaller scale going forward. But this is a really good opportunity for folks to come, learn about the comprehensive plan, engage with the committee members. They really do want, this plan is really dependent upon the input from residents, because that is what formulates the ultimate plan. So really good opportunity coming up. 6 to 8 on Tuesday, the 10th of December. So I hope to see you there. I don't have anything else. We talked about everything on my agenda. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded by Mr. Saad. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.